Hi everyone, and welcome to Meet the Screenwriters. I'm delighted tonight to be able to introduce you to our 7 shortlisted screenwriters. Well, actually 7 shortlisted scripts, but in one of those scripts we have a second screenwriter, and you'll hear about that shortly. So just to let you know, if you didn't already, that this is the inaugural Short Screenplay Award that Catalyst are delighted to be running in association with the Writers Guild of Ireland. We're very grateful to them for their involvement in many ways into our endeavour. So I'm going to just call out the list of our finalists, and then I'm going to go through each one of them, and they're going to tell you a little something about themselves and their writing lives. So we have Mo O'Connell and Graham Malloy, Katie McNeice, Miriam Davis, Roisin Carney, Shannon Welby, and Ash Corristine. So can I start with, just we go down through the list. Mo, will you start to kick us off there and tell us something about you and your writing, and also about Graham, of course?
Yeah, sure. Well, so I'm an actor, writer, director kind of thing. So I started writing, I suppose, in Ballyfermot College of Further Education, maybe even a little before I went to college, actually. But yeah, so I'm writing now with Gemma Cray on Screen Ireland's Spotlight scheme, who I love working with. I love co-writing as well. So that's why I was co-writing with Graham Malloy, and we wrote Sherry Trifle. And he's also an actor as well, an actor-writer. So yeah, so a lot of our writing, or my writing anyway, kind of comes from acting or kind of understanding character and that type of thing. I think that's where I begin, with character kind of. So.
And Mo, can I just ask you maybe to expand a little by telling us, are there topics that you're interested in? Are there kinds of worlds that appeal to you more than others?
I don't know. I suppose. I mean, it's always good to see women's stories. I mean, just from my own point of view, I like to see, someone maybe a bit like myself on screen, or again, I mean, not white people, or things like this. People I haven't seen that much on screen. I quite like to see that, and I'd like to write more. From that point of view. But yeah, I suppose I'm curious. I'm curious about the world. I'm kind of curious about other people's stories, diversity, things like that.
Indeed, I'm sure we all are. Thank you very much, Mo.
No
Katie McNeice, can I come to you next?
Hi,
Katie.
Hi, how are you? So I'm Katie McNeice. I'm a self-taught writer-director. So far, I've got one short behind me, which I wrote, produced, edited, and did the VFX for myself, which is a nightmare. That was my very first film. I got nominated for a Zebby last year, which I was really, really proud of. I've got one feature script under my belt, which is Lily, which I co-wrote with Graham Cantwell. That's nearly finished. Was slowed down a fair bit by the lockdown. I actually won the Comórtas Fishing competition with the script I'm shortlisted for now, and that's obviously completely stalled due to COVID. And I've got another short, hopefully going into pre-production soon, which is Lambing, which won the IMDb Script to Screen Award 2020. So yeah, like all my scripts are pretty much, I call them like identity films. They're very much about peripheral characters with very rich emotional lives. And what I love to do is to write them in such a way that you actually live and feel their emotional experience in a way that you usually don't in a film where it's written by someone that either hasn't lived that or hasn't put the effort into writing it emotionally. So that's how I love to approach films and watch them as well. And it's what I kind of aim for with all my scripts. Anyway, aim for. I don't know if I do.
Aim for, I know. And Katie, you mentioned there you were self-taught. Did you say that you were self-taught?
Yeah.
Did you always write some kind of short stories, or the way when people are in school they might do a bit of writing? And how did you come to script, and why?
I was constantly writing as a child. I won my first writing competition when I was like 7. And it was a poetry competition in school, and I was constantly scribbling. I was writing prose, and like when I was 15 years old, I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning when the whole house was asleep and run downstairs and make a coffee. I thought I liked coffee. I was too young. I used to spit it out, but making it was cool. And I would scribble away in my journal about all these lives and these people that I didn't know, and make things up. And during the day, I'd walk around in school with my journal under my arm. I was delighted with myself, and I got into playwriting when I was in school as well. But it wasn't until I went to college and I was doing English and philosophy. One of our lecturers, Barry Monaghan in UCC, he lectures on cinema, and he came on to the theatre. It seats like 600 people in UCC, And he got up on stage and he started talking about dreams. And he goes, no one cares about your dreams, but you know what, dreams are cinema. And all of a sudden my mind was like, okay, this is it, I want to do cinema. And from there I started writing scripts as well as an awful lot of poetry and stuff as well. But it wasn't until I actually left college that I wrote my first script, but that's definitely where it started.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Katie. Now can we go to Miriam Davis? Miriam, how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Tell us a little something.
Yeah, so I'm a screenwriter and director and actor. We're all slashies here. I worked in theatre and film and radio for years and just went back to do the MA in screenwriting 3 years ago. And now I'm sort of concentrating on screenwriting specifically. So I've written and produced 3 shorts. I've written for kids TV, written for some radio as well. I've a short film in Dublin International Film Festival. And I think what I like to write most is women's stories. Well, everything I've written for screen so far has been a woman's story. I really like to see all sorts of women on screen, particularly those that we don't see that often, like older women and very young women, children, female children, women with disabilities, women of color, trans women. You know, those are the stories that don't get told and that I want to see. So they're the kind of characters that I want to fill my screens with.
Okay, thanks, Miriam. Thank you. And now we've come to Roisin Carney. Roisin, how are you? You're mute now, first of all, Roisin. So,
oh, sorry. There you go. Hello. Very well, thank you. Okay, I'm Roisin Carney, and I went in Corvée and did theatre performance, and then I went on, and I was a technician. I was the first female technician in Ireland, and lighting designer, and a lot of stage direction, and worked a little bit in film, a little bit here and there, and then I always kind of wrote, but I kind of was a little bit unfortunate because I'm dyslexic, so I actually couldn't read until I was in secondary school, basically. But I wrote a lot, very badly spelled, but wrote a lot. And then it's always but I didn't have an awful lot of confidence in that because, you know, it wasn't great. Well, I was kind of a bit teenagey anyway, so it was probably just as well. But then I have 3 kids, so I kind of, when they came along, it was very difficult to continue work. So I kind of took a step back, and I actually did a lot of reading for companies and stuff like that, and particularly in YA and kids stuff. And then I started writing again in kind of 2015 when the kids were a little bit bigger. And since then I've made loads of short films. I've made a number of short films. And then I was just working on a kids TV show there recently, just before the lockdown. Well, actually during lockdown. And I am sort of continuing on in that path. I'm really interested I'm from Rialto, I'm from inner city Dublin, and I was brought up through the AIDS crisis of the 80s and the drugs crisis of the late 70s. So I suppose, and I worked a lot in mental health as well. I worked with people with schizophrenia and manic depression for a number of years. So a lot of what I like to explore the psychology behind things. And very much female-based probably as well, most of the stuff. But I have a film on in Virgin Media as well at the moment that I directed, which was written by Sinead Colopy. And yeah, that's kind of me.
That's a great, women seem to be coming through as a theme, I have to say, but you know, you won't find anybody giving out to you about that here. Thank you very much, Roisin. Can I move now to Shannon Welby? Hi, Shannon.
Hiya, how are you? I'm Shannon. I'm 24 years old, from Donegal. And yeah, I suppose my relationship with cinema and storytelling is probably my longest relationship to date. It's a lifetime one. It's definitely been a lifetime love affair at this stage. I started off writing like mostly short stories and prose, and then I went into working in film during college and after college in distribution. And I always wanted to, like, for the last few years, screenwriting's been on my radar, something I really wanted to get into. But then I didn't really know what to do with it. And like most, I kind of dived in too early, wrote a big screenplay that I would probably cry if I looked at now. And then about a year ago, I think was a turning point for me where I started to really kind of knuckle down to how will I actually go about learning what I need to learn here. And I was actually sitting in a film in the Dublin Film Festival, and I saw a writer's name pop up on the screen, and I recognised that name, and I looked up online and saw that that was actually a writer who's a lot of their stuff they'd written was stuff I related to. So I just reached out and said, look, if you have 20 minutes, like, could I just get on a Zoom call with you and just ask you some questions? And they were great. Like, they gave me books and screenplays to go off and read, and just kind of started mobilizing me to go and pursue it. And from there, like, I kind of, you know, the more you look, the more you find the webinars available, the information available, especially in Ireland. And it kind of steamrolled then, and I really got into learning the craft and all the things I needed to know. And then I got offered a place in the MA in screenwriting, so I'm doing that now at the minute, and that's kind of my background. And my first short film, Every Deliverance Helps, is currently in production as well. So that's my story. So screenwriter / Donegaler is my slash.
Well, wasn't that wonderful that that person reached out to you and, you know, engaged with you? I mean, it's a wonderful ad for some kind of mentorship, isn't it? How important that is. Thank you very much. So we're coming now, I think we'll go to you, Ash. Especially if you want to mute. We really will come to
Hi, I'm sorry I look like an alien. I've done something to my camera and I can't fix it.
Oh, we were just saying you looked superb. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
So tell us about yourself.
I'm from Laois, and I'm now from Clare because I've just moved in the last week. So living in Clare now, which is very nice, very exciting. And I was always into writing, and then I think I was working for an online website for years, which was really dull. And I won a contest in the UK called BAFTA Oakcliffe, and from that I got an agent and I got a lot of meetings with people. And then I won it again a few years later. So I thought I may as well just give the writing thing a go, and went part-time in my job, and just been writing ever since, really. And I decided to do a master's in playwriting actually 2 years ago, because I hadn't a clue about theatre or plays, and I just thought, like Ireland, it's so important to know about this stuff. So I did that 2 years ago, and it was brilliant. It was incredibly difficult, you know, the theory side of it. The academia was like mad, really hard, but it was brilliant. And I think it actually helped a lot. So work-wise, I suppose I have a feature in development. It was supposed to shoot last winter, but you know, COVID and everything else. So that's with Screen Ireland and Northern Ireland Screen, and a few shorts done and a few pilots optioned. So that's about it, really. Sort of, you know, starting out a little bit.
Yeah, that'll do you nicely, I'd say, by the sound of it, actually. Ash, do you very nicely at the moment. Thank you very much. Helen, last but absolutely not least, how are you? You're mute.
Hi, Susan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. I just want to say, I can't believe I'm in the company of all these women. It's just, I can't believe it. All I do is see your names online and talking at various different things, and here I am with you. So it's phenomenally exciting. I can't believe I'm here, really. Anyway, so my background is I studied drama therapy. I went on to do a master's degree in contemporary theatre practice, during which time I wrote my first play. I submitted that play to what was then called the Allied to Met Playwright Award at Bush Theatre, London. So that got onto the shortlist, which kind of was a good introduction to me in that theatre as a new writing theatre. I was part of that new writing group. That opened a few doors. I got supported by World Productions. I don't know whether any of you remember This Life at all. You know that World Productions produced that. Do you remember? And so they supported me to enter for the BBC Two Dennis Potter Screenwriting Award. And also, time I wrote and directed a play which went on in Cottesloe at the National Theatre. Now, I have to say at this point, all this happened 20 years ago. So, I am re-engaging with my writing, and I'll have to say Waking the Feminists was a really important part in allowing me to believe that I could pick up my pen again. Sort of, it gave me permission to pick my pen up again and give things a go. I mean, obviously I did other things. I did in between. I did a PGC at Goldsmiths to be a drama teacher and taught drama in schools in South East London. I started, when I came to Ireland in 2006, I started a little drama school here, Camden School of Drama, little shows on for kids, you know, for the parents and so on. So, yeah, I started studying with Barry McAvoy at Turtle Productions with his screenwriting course, and I wrote a little scene, and from that little scene, that's the piece that I submitted. So here I am on that long journey to getting here.
A long and impressive journey. Thank you, Helen.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go back around again. I want you to tell us the name of your screenplay, and I want you to give us just some sense, if you want to, about how you think maybe it speaks to the ethos, and maybe you don't want to do that side of it. Maybe you haven't thought around that side of it, but if you do, I'd like to hear it. So can we start again with Mo?
Yeah, sure. So it's called Sherry Trifle. It's about Bertha, who's a street-dwelling heroin addict, and she also happens to be a lesbian. And she is buying a sherry trifle for her ailing and very old mother for her birthday. And her mother's being brought home from the nursing home for her birthday with the family, you know, in the family home. So this is going to be her last birthday. So there's like a ticking clock where she has to get this sherry trifle to her mother. But there's a lot of obstacles that kind of come in her way, like old kind of other kind of heroin addict friends, you know, that kind of pop up and get in her way and stuff. So yeah, it's quite an uplifting story. She overcomes them and gives up a stash of heroin for the sherry trifle, which is stolen off her and stuff. So she gets to her mother at the end, kind of thing. But yeah, so I suppose it's just about, well, Bertha, I suppose, this special, kind of unique woman. You know, you won't meet many kind of heroin addicts who will give up their last stash of heroin for anything, let alone their mother. But it's a catalyst, basically, Catalyst International Film Festival, for her to kind of rehabilitate herself and come out of, you know, addiction. And it's kind of her heart. She's running with her heart. She's running with the sherry trifle and chasing her with it. And she's basically saving herself.
Is it a comedy, or is there some comedy in there, Mo?
Yeah, there's loads of comedy. It's quite kind of slapstick. I mean, it's meant to be kind of, you know, it should be very moving as well. You know, how I want to shoot it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's very funny. I mean, the chase scenes around the Liberties markets and stuff would be quite kind of Chaplin-esque to a certain degree, although, you know, kind of shots like kind of, you know, from Chinatown and things like that, you know, so we'll be following them handheld and legging it with them on carts and stuff. So having all storyboard and stuff, but yeah, so it should be very funny, a little bit, I suppose, like Adam and Paul, a tiny bit.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mo. What about you, Katie?
My project's called Focal Ballycree. It's written in Irish, which is very unusual for me, but it's about a father who's looking forward to the birth of his baby, and he's basically writing a letter to this stranger who's going to be showing up at his house with nothing, saying that that's okay, it's fine, like you can come here and we'll take things slow and we'll get to know each other and you'll get to know this house. And his father is a writer by trade, and so what he wants to do is to imagine all these beautiful words that he's going to teach this little boy before he can even learn to speak, about these experiences he's going to have. And so the experiences are like culminate in very simple domestic moments into words that add up to our experience of home and love. And so it sounds very sentimental because it is. It's very philosophical. Like my granddad died as I was writing it and I was grieving and I was trying to make sense of everything. And so I suppose the dad kind of takes him through all these moments of like meeting his baby sister, meeting his granddad, deciding his granddad was his best friend, playing hide and go seek, his imagination catching fire, reading books, discovering music, listening to rain against the window, this kind of stuff. And the whole thing is written to the rhythm of a heartbeat rising and falling and coming to life and dying again. as the grandfather passes away. And like the last thing that he says to his boy sentimentally is that although all the words I've given you add up to nothing in this moment because you're grieving, like grief is just one great privilege of love. And I suppose in a way, I've written lots of stuff already about like the LGBT identity, but what I want to start merging into, like I've written about the older female LGBT experience, like Lily is about a teenager who's coming out in school, and Lambing is about a baby who's intersex, who's coming into the world in a way that just, you know, he just doesn't fit, and his parents need to make this really cruel decision. But what I really want to start doing is pushing the boundaries of gender. So like while this is a film about parenthood and it's very sentimental, very emotional, it's about a man, and that's completely fine. Because I think a lot of the time what men shy away from is this feeling of being too feminine. And like being domestic and being a single parent, you know, is by no means a feminine experience exclusively. And like those parts of raising children and passing on identity and giving them the faith to love their own identity is by no means a female thing to do. It's a human thing to do. And that's why in envisioning his baby growing up and falling in love, he imagines his son might be gay, and he looks at him, and the moment, because there's never more than a word or two on a moment, is your heart and my pride. And that's how he kind of wraps up before the grandfather dies. I suppose the last thing is that I don't speak Irish. I had to teach myself how to write Irish all over again to write the script. So it was right at the start of the lockdown, and I locked myself into this room. I've got a big window in front of me, and I sat down with a stack of dictionaries, and I found this robot online called OBr that if you type in a word, it'll repeat it back to you. So the whole thing rhymes. There's a rhythm in my script. And I did get someone to proofread it for me, and like a native speaker. I hired them for an hour to help it, but I just thought there was something so poetic and so moving about our native language that really just gets you in a way that if I had written this in English, it would have fallen flat. And I think for me, that was a huge challenge, because in school, I felt like I was a bit stupid because I couldn't get Irish the way that everyone else did in my class. But that's not it. It's because I wasn't writing it the way that I wanted to. So for me, just on a personal level, writing it like with that challenge, like writing in a language that I didn't understand from the get-go is brilliant. And now I'm speaking Irish all the time, which is great.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you,
Yeah.
Katie. Miriam.
Yeah, so my short is called High Tea, and it's about Daphne. She's a 91-year-old woman who suffers from crippling arthritis, and she doesn't like being held back because she's got a busy life to get on with. So she goes in search of, she doesn't like the medication she has to take, so she goes in search of an alternate option and tries cannabis oil. But unfortunately, she takes a little bit too much to begin with and loses 3 days of her life. And when she recovers from that, she's grand. So she sets about looking for another alternative and notices this young fella walking down her back lane with his dog, or walking past her house with his dog. And she decides to follow him, only to discover he's growing marijuana. So in order to have her not tell the police, she tells him that if he gives her some of his marijuana, she will keep stum. But she doesn't know how to take it, so she invites him around to help her administer it. She's completely unable to smoke it, and he suggests edibles. And so she starts baking a little treat for them every afternoon. And he's actually suffering from a brain tumor and is self-medicating with the marijuana. And thus grows their unlikely friendship, this 25-year-old boy and this 91-year-old woman who have great crack together. And they're both kind of looking at their own mortality. It's like the elephant in the room, and also the thing that bonds them together. But it's Daphne's story where she thinks she's looking for a solution to her pain, but actually she needs company. She needs some energy in her life. She needs a solution to her loneliness.
Thanks, Miriam. That sounds great. Roisin. Mute, Roisin. You're mute.
The short I put in is called Abide With Me, and it's actually it's based on a feature film I started writing in 1996. Oh. So there you go. So it's a few years old. No, that I literally wrote it as a short within a couple of days. But it's, as I was saying, I was brought up in Rialto, and it sort of, I always feel like 1983 certainly there was, the abortion referendum when the AIDS was brought in, and heroin use was really bad, and AIDS people were, certainly, yeah, no, people were dying at that point of AIDS within my community. And there was a lot of young men that minded me as a small child who all died in the early 90s. And they had died when the AIDS cult was brought into City Arts Centre where I worked, but I hadn't been told. And so I started writing this at that point because I was kind of very, very overwhelmed by it, you know. And then I suppose as a female, and I'm used to, and I always lived around really, really strong, loving, caring, maternal women. And that's what, like, places like Ryalda or in a lot of the inner city areas were, you know, it was 50 mammies hanging over the balcony, and you'd get fed by them, or you'd literally get a slap by them, depending on what was going on. There was certainly no, the whole thing was like you were reared by a village, like it was, and very, very close. And there was also a huge amount, because there was an awful lot of drug dealing. There was like, there were literally people sitting in the corner of the playground shooting up, like, so it wasn't hidden, and there was an awful lot of people coming into the area and dealing out of there as well. But it was also really funny because lots of really mad, really insane stuff happened. But it's just women I don't get to see. I don't get to see those women that I know, that I grew up with and who brought me up to an extent, ever. You know what I mean? And I find it very frustrating that all these incredible people are just not represented. They don't seem to exist. And powerful women, like really, really powerful women. So that was really why I wanted to write it. And it's also, I suppose, with the AIDS thing and with some the people who got it, it was so random in some ways. And there was a level of blame put on people who were drug users who ended up with HIV, and I could never understand that. Like, I mean, some of these kids were 14, and I could never understand how that can happen. And I think there's a real lack of understanding of that sometimes. So yeah, basically that's how I came to it.
Okay, thanks, Roisin. Okay, so we're going, I think, on to Shannon now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my short film is called Divine Interventions. So it's about a mixed race schoolgirl called Martina, who's growing up in the very much Catholic and the very much Caucasian countryside. And she's experiencing the very painful, unrelenting force of a teenage crush. So because her uncle is the priest in the local church, she gets herself into a scheme to use the confession box to capture her crush via his mother. So it's a comedy. And you asked the question of how our short films can relate to Catalyst and what this festival is about. And like, it's all diversity and inclusion, but like at the fundamental of that is, you know, when we talk about diversity, just understanding somebody else and their story. And for me, like, it is like I can speak about, you know, what it's like to be somebody, an outsider in a certain situation when you're growing up and, you know, everybody looks different around you. And I think that in Ireland, you know, there's a very much with our microaggressions or the language or kind of the environment you have, it can be very much like us versus them, like there's something wrong with you if you're different. And it takes a long time to shake that off and realize like that's not the case. So I think that like really what I'm trying to do with this short and in my writing as well is, like, as a writer, you've got like such a privilege and such a power to obviously first and foremost to entertain, but to teach as well and to empower, and not just empower the people whose voices are the minorities on the screen, but also empower the other people who don't realize, and once they witness those stories and learn from them, they're empowered to understand somebody else. So I get, it's as my own experience as somebody mixed race growing up in the countryside, like I have some funny stories to tell, and I enjoy telling those stories through humor as well, because even though the topics and the subjects are very serious, the entertainment factor as well can be great. But yeah, that's what my story is about.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Thanks. Ash, what about you?
My script is called Shadow, and it's about a 10-year-old girl called Zoe, but she's called Shadow because she's since she was a little girl, she followed her dad, who's a farmer, around his farm just day in, day out. So she's called his shadow. And in the early teens, her mother dies very suddenly, and the father just goes to pieces and can't cope. And so she decides to take it upon herself to run the dairy farm herself. But the father believes it's actually the mother coming back to do it, because she does it early in the morning before school. So he thinks it's sort of the ghost or the angel of the mother coming back to do it. And when she realizes this, she realizes she has to keep doing it because she loves him so much that even though she's actually totally knackering herself and killing herself, that in order to save him, she has to keep doing it. So it's comedy drama, and it's I think when I was a kid growing up in the country, you know, kids were so resilient and tough. And like when I think about the things I was let do, you know, go off at age 8, cycle off for miles and train wild horses by myself. Like, it was mad, really, the stuff you could do, and nobody said anything to you. And I think we've lost a lot of that now because, you know, I suppose we don't have a choice really. But I just really like the idea of a little girl just taking over. And, you know, in a lot of films we see, you know, the parents having to deal with grief and cope with grief and look after their kids and be strong for them. But I haven't seen too much of it in the other way, you know, the juxtaposition of a child deciding she's just going to pick up the pieces and look after everything. So yeah, I just thought it'd be an interesting sort of dichotomy to switch roles there.
Okay, thank you, Ash. And Helen, finally, tell us about your script.
Thank you, Susan. So my piece is called Butterfly Mountain, and as I said, it came out of a piece of work that came out of a screenwriting course, and I realised that I couldn't leave this character alone that I'd written, and she's a widow. She's recently widowed, and she's lonely, and she doesn't really understand her own loneliness. Other than she wakes up every night and she has a very chintzy kind of bedroom, and the wallpaper and all the chintz in the room comes alive to her, you know. So in her loneliness, she uses her imagination through what's in her immediate environment, and she hears voices, she hears harmony singing through the patterns and flowers and so on around her. And she believes it. She believes she can hear the harmonies and the singing, and she always nudges her non-existent husband now because he's died and said they're here again, and then has to accept that he's not there, and you wouldn't believe me anyway. So she's taken on a trip on a birthday into a butterfly house by her daughter, and while she's in the butterfly house, the daughter is sort of quite reprimanding and quite just kind of treating her as a child, really, which she resents, only for her to turn around and say to her daughter, after she's been quite harsh with her, well, I am actually doing something. And the daughter says, well, what are you going to do? And she says, well, I'm going to form a group. He says, well, what kind of group are you going to form? I'm going to form a singing group. And the daughter doesn't believe it. And she says, and not only am I going to form a singing group, we're going to sing on the top of Ben Bulben. That's what we're going to do. Which sounds absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, that's what she goes on to do. And she does. She forms her own group within her own age group. She uses a friend to help her out on Facebook to get a youthful group involved. They all take a picture of themselves and wear T-shirts and swap them. So all the young people climb to the top of Ben Bulben with pictures of the older people, and all the older people sit in a sports hall wearing a T-shirt of all the younger people. And then they synchronise the singing from the top of Ben Bulben in the sports hall. So we have the harmony of voices of the young and of the old, and she makes it happen. Because why not? I suppose I just wanted to write a celebration of life at that stage in your life. Why not? Why can't you have dreams? why can't you have the next chapter? And I truly think that, you know, we should go through life having as many chapters as we want, and whatever age we are, there's always a new chapter. And I suppose as well, obviously, that, you know, that the idea of that story sings to me as well, because I think, you know, we can go through all sorts of things in life and we can feel excluded, we can feel that we might have failed, and sometimes, you know, the heartbeat comes back, doesn't it? And sometimes you have to have that bit of self-belief and keep on moving forward. So I think how my piece, how I try to respond to the brief of the Catalyst Film Festival is that, you know, we can do anything at any age. Don't let anybody stop you. And believe, yeah.
Well, that's a very good line to end on, believe, indeed. And, you know, I'm looking here, we're out of time, so you'll be glad to know I can't talk too much more, but I do think that you may not be aware of it, but I do think that as writers, your own backgrounds, the fact that, in fact, wonderfully, you are all female. I mean, it's not that anybody said, you know, we're only looking for female writers, but I think it's interesting because, of course, female writers there's been some improvements in recent years, but there's still a bit of a ways to go. And also there are things about the characters in your work that are different as well. So that in a more general way, I would say to you that you do speak in different ways to the ethos of the festival. So I've really, really genuinely enjoyed chatting to you guys. I wish each and every one of you the best of luck. And it's been a pleasure. So we'll just have to keep our fingers and toes crossed. And as Helen says, believe. That's all we can do. And until I see you all again, folks, goodbye. All the best. Bye-bye and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Miriam.